perspective, a higher level. This is the altitude shift with the antes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Altitude Shift. I am your hostess, Sandra McKnight, and today I have a very special guest with me today, Arnold Datron Lee, who is an attorney, and he's going to share some information with us about his journey.
Thank you for having me, Sandra.
You are welcome. Let's begin by talking about the beginning. Every journey starts with a spark. What first inspired you to become an attorney?
Becoming an attorney was a second career choice for me. My first career choice was a school teacher. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in education, and I taught for 2 years. And in the course of that 2 years, I discovered that I wanted to do something else outside of teaching. And of course, growing up, people told me, since I like to argue, that I should be an attorney. And so I started looking into that, started looking specifically at going to law school and what it would take. And I applied. I got in. Once I started, I came to the realization that I could do it. God blessed me to get out of law school. God blessed me to pass the bar. And once I passed the bar, I started practicing law, and I have been doing it ever since for 20 years. So it was not necessarily something that sparked that interest or something that I've always wanted to do. It was something that, due to me not wanting to continue the first career option, ultimately led me to law school, which ultimately led me to practicing law.
Now, that is a very interesting story because I think that's important for students to know as well, because you can always pivot. You can always say, okay, I thought I wanted to be in this career, but maybe not so much anymore. And you can make a change, because that's what it sounds like, exactly what you did.
Absolutely. And not only me, the interesting thing about law school that I learned, that a lot of my classmates had careers prior to coming to law school.
Wow.
Matter of fact, I had one of my classmates was a neurosurgeon. He was a neurosurgeon. This guy operated on brains and decided he just wanted to go to law school. He had an interest in law school. They got tired of practicing law and decided to go to Ole Miss Law School, and that's where I met him. And I met other people who were police officers, former military, former nurses, a wide range of individuals who had other careers prior to coming to law school. It's probably about half and half from those who actually went to undergrad and went straight to undergrad to law school, as opposed to undergrad, worked in other fields, and eventually went to law school. So, and that's a part of life. We make plans, and oftentimes when we make those plans and discover our plans are not what we thought they're going to be or what we want to do, and you just pursue other things. And I would encourage anybody, if you're doing something you don't like, try something else. Don't be stuck doing something that you don't like, because if you're doing something every day, 8 hours a day, you should at least have some fulfillment from it. And so just because you went to school for it, don't mean you have to commit to something and continue to do something if you don't like it. Just because you went to school for it, don't mean you have to continue in that path. There are other things that you can explore, and I encourage you to explore.
I like that, and I think that's some very important information. Was there a defining moment where you said, this is it, I'm really going to pursue this? What was the defining moment?
I think the defining moment was I just knew that I didn't want to be in the classroom for the next 30 years. Mm-hmm. And so I just made in my mind that I needed to start pursuing some other things, and particularly the law school. And so that's when I started researching what would it take to get into law school, what law schools would best suit me. And so that's the path that I took.
Okay. I love that because so many people have dreams, and we know that dreams are sometimes hard to follow, but not everyone decides to act on their dream. What did that early vision look like for you? What did you think law school would look like in your mind? What was that vision for you?
Hard work.
Yeah.
Because, that's what we're told. You're told from before you go to law school, from watching televisions, movies, just doing research, that is a lot of hard work. And that is true. It was a lot of hard work. But the good thing about it, I think for me, and I think not only for me, I think it's indicative of just people going to law school. The first year is the hardest because it's a new environment. You're doing something new. You're learning something new. And so if you're coming from undergrad, straight from undergrad, or from a different career path prior to going to law school, you have to acclimate or get adjusted to that new environment.
Yes.
And it required a lot of studying. It required a lot of reading. And so I knew going into it, there was not going to be a lot of time to do nothing, to goof off, to treat it as if it was undergrad. Because unlike undergrad with law school, particularly the law school I went to, which is Ole Miss, you only have one test per semester. And your whole, whether or not you're going to pass or fail any particular subject is going to come down to that one test.
Wow.
Unlike high school or undergraduate school, where you may have a multitude of tests over the course of the semester. So if you don't do good on the first one, I got the second one to make it up, the third, so forth and so on, and maybe writing a paper or whatever you may need in order to get your grades up. But law school is not like that. At least the law school I went to, and most law schools are like that. You go the entire semester, and at the end of that semester, you take one test for each course.
And that's the determining
Yes.
factor for your
Yes,
grade?
and your grade that you're going to get for that course is going to come from that one test. So if you get an A, that's going to be your A. If you get a B, that's going to be your B. You get a C, so forth and so on. And so, and that's a lot of pressure because there's no makeup. This is do or die. On that one test is going to be do or die. And God blessed me to be in a position where I was able to excel in those courses. But going back to your question, I just knew it was going to be a lot of hard work, and I prepared myself for that hard work. But the good thing about during that time is that after I got past that first year and got acclimated and got that first year behind me and know that I wasn't going to get sent home like a lot of people after that first year, it became easier because I kind of knew the system, I kind of knew the teachers, I kind of knew what was expected, and how to deliver what was expected of me. And it just became easier. So the second and third year was not as hard, and pretty much the third year was a breeze because at that point you've gotten all your hours pretty much under you and you're doing more clinical work. And when I say clinical work, Ole Miss have, and again I'm referencing Ole Miss because that's where I went to law school, but pretty much other law schools have same setup, is that where you do more practical aspect of the law. Like for example, one of my professors had a poverty law clinic. So what we would do, we would go to, I think every Wednesday, go to this church. And the church had already previously advertised that you need legal assistance. The law students and the law professor be here for free and help you draft up a will. And so we get practical experience of doing things. And so it's not necessarily just reading cases and writing and the normal things that you would do, especially in your first year. You're actually doing practical things to learn how to practice law and to learn the law. And so that made it the third year the easiest year out of all of them.
So when you say you prepared yourself, how so?
I prepared myself mentally. I knew that I was going to have to spend a lot of time studying. And so, because we were told it was going to be so intense, you can't even have a job. We were not allowed to work. And so in my mind, that told me that mentally I needed to be prepared to block out everything and be laser focused on the task of hand of getting out of that first year, because we were also told if you get out that first year, 9 times out of 10 you're going to graduate law school. And I found that to be true, and for myself and for other people going through the program. And so I mentally prepared myself. I did not have any I didn't have cable because I wasn't going to be watching TV because I was going to be studying. During that time, when I was coming through, cell phones was just coming on the scene, and so it was more so the house phone. So I had a house phone, but I wasn't using that because before cell phones and you had a house phone, if you're too young, you probably don't remember this. You got long distance charges, so you could easily run up a phone bill. So I wasn't talking on the phone, and so I tried to be focused on, I'm here to get out of law school.
Yes.
I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to get out of law school. But interesting enough, God provided a way that I met who's now my best friend in law school. I wasn't looking for friends. I wasn't going to be mean and not be friendly. Right. But at the same time, I didn't go there to establish any kind of social life. I went there with the goal of getting out of law school, which I knew required me hitting the books. And so I prepared myself mentally to do those things. And I think in looking back, being 2 years removed from a master program, I was still in the study mindset on top of being a teacher. So I didn't have to get into a mental mindset to really get prepared because I was already kind of prepared recently coming out of a master's program and being a teacher. And so the good thing for me, it wasn't that hard. I was already kind of focused, I guess what I'm saying. And so it wasn't that hard to get fully locked in and focused. But I had to prepare myself mentally for that because I knew it was going to be a task, a very difficult task to get out of that first year. And by the mercy and grace of God, I was able to do so.
Oh, very good and interesting. Well, let's talk about the journey because we know it's not all smooth. Law school alone is no small feat. Where are some of your biggest challenges? What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
In law school?
Yes.
I think it was just a matter of sticking to the plan of being disciplined. Because even though I knew I had to be laser focused and disciplined, sometimes it's easier said than done, because there are distractions because we are social beings. And as I just told you, even though I didn't go to law school looking for friends, I made friends. And anytime you have friends, they're going to want to do things. You want to socialize. And I did those things, don't get me wrong. But you have to be, and I had to be disciplined in order to maintain that focus. And I think the hardest part was constantly to be disciplined, not to go home every weekend because I didn't live, Ole Miss is in Oxford, Mississippi. I lived about 2 hours away, so not a very long drive. And so to be disciplined, not to go home on the weekends, to stay, to study, to do my work, not to socialize too much, not to want to turn on, ultimately get cable and start watching TV because as a human being, as a social human being, and if you're used to doing those things, you're going to want to do those things. But I just had to be committed to being disciplined, to stay on course, to meet my goal, if I got into law school, I need to get out.
Right.
And the simple fact is expensive going to law school. So
Right.
I needed, not only because I wanted to advance my career, I didn't want to get out, have debt, and then not have a degree.
Right. Or a job.
Or a job behind it.
Yes. So that's real. I think people often see an attorney, but they don't see the grind behind what it takes to become an attorney. Can we talk about that? The grind of it.
You talking about after law school or actually the grind of being an attorney?
Being in law school and trying to become an attorney. That grind, because I think people say, oh, he's an attorney or she's an attorney, but I think they underestimate what all it takes. I mean, I've talked to different lawyers and I've heard some horror stories about sacrifices, about, things that they, like you said, you had to give up and you had to be disciplined and laser focused. But what are some other points that you can share with someone who wants to become an attorney, a young person interested?
Yeah, there's a grind to going to law school, there's a grind to anything that's worth having anything. And so there was a grind going to law school. And I think I described it earlier that, the constant studying, being focused, not to socialize too much, not, resisting the urge to want to go home every weekend, knowing I, need to be studying and things of that nature. And so I think that's the part of my grind. I think that's typical of any law student. And I think from watching, getting from people's perception in general, from how people talk about law school, from movies and from TV, I don't think there's a perception that anybody think either med school or law school or any of these professional programs are easy. So, but I do think when it comes to the practice of law, that people believe the practice of law is easy, and it's not. Because I think the media through TV and movies and other media outlets make it seem like that lawyers just show up in courtrooms and then they just get a lot of money, and that's just all to it. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of things that goes into the daily grind of being an attorney that clients don't see, no one sees or really know about except attorneys that's in the field and judges. But there is in the practice of law, there is a daily grind. There's a lot of hours you have to commit. There's a lot of things that has to be done. There's only so many hours to do it. And there's a lot of expectations. And so I would dare to say there's more of a grind in the practice of law than there is in the law school. Because if you've gone through undergrad or a master program, going to class, listening to lectures, that's the same. I think the stakes are more high in law school in the sense of, going back to what I was saying, everything is dependent on that one exam.
Right.
That makes the stakes higher because you don't have those other exams to kind of serve as a buffer or the makeup if you miss one. But when it comes to the grind, I think it's more so on the practice side. Being a lawyer, you have to grind. That's just the bottom line. There's just no way, if you're going to be a successful lawyer, let me put it like that, you're going to have to grind. And there's just the nature of the beast, and there's just no way around that. And so if you're not prepared to do the grind once you actually finish law school, then law is probably not for you, because it's just, in this field, there is no part-time. There is no, there's no way of getting around the grind. It is what it is.
So when I hear you talk, I hear failure was not an option for you. But was there ever a time when you thought about giving up? And if so, what was it that kept you going?
No, I never thought about giving up because, one, that's just not my nature. Not only in law school, but anything. That's just not who I am. But once I had committed to going to law school, I was committed to getting out and doing what it takes to get out. And I was able to do that by the mercy and grace of God. And so I never thought about it. And actually, I tell people all the time, even though I went to law school prepared for all 3 years to do the grind, really I just had to do the grind 1 year. That first year, if you can do that grind the first year, you can really you can get through that second and third year. And so I did what I had to do. I really grinded that first year, and the second and third year, those were some good times. I just enjoyed my time in law school because I did the work on the front end that would allow me to kind of, I ain't gonna say
Coast.
chill, kind of coast,
bit.
for lack of a better word, that second and third year, especially that third year. And so I enjoyed my time in Oxford, Mississippi. I enjoyed my time at Ole Miss Law School. And so that was never a time. That I thought about quitting, because I had faith in God that He was going to allow me to get through, and sure enough, He did. And so, no, I never thought about quitting law school.
Well, that's very powerful, because perseverance is often the thing that differentiates between people actually realizing their dream and people who don't. So perseverance is big.
I agree.
You told us about your sacrifices that you had to make during that season of your life. So we already know it's really hard and you have to give up a lot. Let's talk about the breakthrough moment. That moment when everything started coming together for you in your mind.
As far as whether or not I was going to get out,
Yes.
when
I
I got
mean, I know after the first year you said that was.
yeah, when I got my first grades at the end of the first semester, the fall semester, I got my first grades and I did pretty well. And it built confidence in me that I could do this. I've done it, and continue to do what you're doing, and you'll be all right. And that's what I did. So actually, after that, when I got my grades at the end of my first year, I did pretty well, and so I kind of knew I'm going to get through this.
So, what did it feel like when you actually became an attorney?
That's been over 20 years ago.
I
So
know, but I know it was a big deal. You got to relive that moment. What did it feel like?
It felt different. It felt new. It felt exciting. And that's the best way to describe it. I don't know. I was happy in the sense of I was through with law school. I was happy that was over with. But I was more so happy when I passed the bar. Because if you don't know, just because you go to law school and graduate, that don't mean you're licensed to practice law or you can practice law. Mississippi, along with almost every state now, after you finish law school, you have to pass the bar for your particular state that you want to practice in. And so I had to pass the Mississippi bar. And so we graduated in May, and I think the bar was in September. And so you spend the summer grinding and studying for the bar. It's like I graduated, I took 1 week off, just let my hair down to relax, and then after that you go into what's called bar prep, where at that time, in order to pass the Mississippi bar, you had to do a 3-day test. And so I spent the summer getting ready to take that 3-day test, which we call the bar, in order to get licensed to actually practice law. And once I got my results back and I passed the bar, that's probably when I was most happiest, because I'm like, thank you, God. You got me through law school. You got me through the bar. Now I can actually do something with what I've been been studying for and learning to do for the past 3 years.
So, how has becoming an attorney changed your life personally and professionally?
I think professionally, it changed my life in the sense of it addressed one of the reasons why I left education. Unfortunately, the reason why I left education is because as a single male, financially, I was struggling with my teacher's pay. And then put this out there in full candor, it didn't help that I went out and bought a new car. And so I was struggling financially, and I didn't like that feeling. Yeah. And that actually ultimately led me to start looking at a different career path, which was the law. And so I said all that to say this. Personally, it changed my life because financially, I'm better off as an attorney than I am when I was a teacher. And so personally, that's how it's changed. Professionally, I don't know if it's changed I don't know if it's changed. And the reason why I say that is because, as you know, as an educator, education is about presentation to students. What I do, because all lawyers, that's another misconception that all lawyers do the same thing. They're different. There's over 100 different areas of practice of law, and all of us do something different depending on what area you're practicing in. But for what I do, which is litigation, lawsuits, it's still presentation. It's just a presentation to a jury as opposed to students. And so in that sense, it's kind of still the same thing. My audience is just different. Instead of a classroom of 30 students, it's a jury of 12. And so professionally, I would say I'm pretty much doing the same thing as far as basically presentation. And so that's why I say probably not as different as opposed if I went to, let's say, accounting. Accounting and teaching, that's totally two different things. But what I do in the practice of law and what I did as a teacher, I see it in my mind pretty much on the same level, in that sense that it's presentation. You're presenting something to someone and asking them to either do something in the form of the students learn this or rule in my favor.
Well, this has been such an inspiring conversation, and it teaches us that it's not just about talent. You know, it's about sacrifice, it's about perseverance.
Absolutely.
You know, a combination of things, not just how talented you are. So this has been very inspiring. And I thank you for joining us today. And thank you
Well,
so
thank you
much.
for having me. I appreciate it. Thank
Come
you.
back anytime.
Ready to rise, a new perspective, a higher level. This is the altitude shift with the antis.